Hello, everyone. First, I'd like to extend a huge thank you to Fabio for reaching out and facilitating this whole thing and allowing me to speak with you all today. And a big shout out and a thank you to all of you guys for spending your time with me today. And I have a great appreciation for all that you do. When, uh, when I was 8 years old, I moved from Southern California to Oregon. And I would fly back and forth between my mom and my dad every summer and Christmas from the time I was 8 to the time I was 18. And I didn't really have a great appreciation for what you all do until I gave a 2-day workshop at the Boeing factory in SeaTech. And when I really got to see what all goes into, planes and working on them, I definitely garnered a greater appreciation for all you do. So I just want to say thank you to you guys. Thank you to Fabio for allowing me to be here today. So a little bit about myself. My name is JJ Jeremy Jones. I joined the John Maxwell team in 2019. I became a coach, speaker, and trainer and got certified. For those of you who don't know who John Maxwell is, he spent over 35 years teaching on leadership and skills to be a leader. And you're going to hear leadership referenced a lot today in what I'll be talking about. The reason is because these skills, specifically communication and connection, are very vital to leading a team, even if you're just a peer leader and not necessarily a title-based leader. And so that's where I'm going to be using teachings from the book Everyone Communicates, Few Connect by John Maxwell. We're going to be teaching on 3 different principles. But first, I'd like to kind of talk about communication. A lot of people feel like emailing and having a meeting, giving information, that's communicating. Unfortunately, it's not. We have people that do that all the time on the TV, on the radio. That's broadcasting. Those are broadcasters. Those are podcasters. They're broadcasting information. You see, to be able to communicate, someone has to be listening. Someone has to be understanding what's being said and have the ability to respond. Ralph G. Nichols said the number one criteria for advancement and promotion for professionals is the ability to communicate effectively. Communication is huge. And it's crucial to be able to communicate and connect. And it's not just success in the workplace, it's success on a personal level too. Every relationship, every human interaction we have, we need that connection. We need that communication. Relationships like your coworkers, your superiors, your people who work under you, your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, any interaction we have with people, being able to communicate is a life skill. But we want to go above and beyond that and learn how to connect. So it is a very vital skill. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is really bridging that gap between communication and connection. So I'd like to tell you a story real quick about Jorge Rodriguez. So Jorge Rodriguez was an Old West bank robber from Mexico, okay? He operated around the Texas border during the 1900s. Jorge was so good, the Texas Rangers had to form a special task force to try and stop him. One late afternoon, one of the special rangers spotted Rodriguez slipping across the border back into Mexico. The special ranger trailed him at a discreet distance, and he watched the outlaw return to his home village and mingle with the people in the town square. Well, when Rodriguez went into his favorite cantina to relax, the ranger slipped in and managed to get the drop on him. With a pistol to the bank robber's head, the lawman said, "Jorge Rodriguez, I know who you are, and I've come to take back all the money that you've stolen from the banks in Texas. And unless you give it to me, I'm going to blow your head off. Well, Rodriguez could see the man's badge. He could discern his hostile intent. But there was a problem. Jorge didn't speak English. He began speaking rapidly in Spanish, but the ranger couldn't understand because he didn't speak Spanish. Just then, a young boy came up and said in English, I can help. I speak English and Spanish. Do you want me to be your translator? The ranger thought for a moment and then nodded. The boy then quickly explained everything to Jorge Rodriguez that the ranger had said. Nervously, Jorge said, Tell the ranger that I've not spent a cent of the money. If he goes to the town well, faces north, counts down 5 stones, he will find a loose one there. Pull it out. All the money is behind there. Please tell him quickly. The boy thought for a moment and turned to the ranger and said, Senor, Jorge Rodriguez is a brave man. He says he's prepared to die. Jorge had one problem. Couldn't connect. So this story reminds me of a saying that Nelson Mandela had. He said, "Speak to a man in a language he understands, and it will go to his head. Speak to a man in his language, and it will go to his heart." So we're going to be talking about 3 keys to connecting effectively from this book. Okay, so principle number 1, that is connecting increases your influence in every situation. Connecting increases your influence in every situation. So I'm going to throw up this graphic here. So, presidential historian Robert Alex said successful presidents exhibit 5 skills and qualities that enable them to achieve things that others don't. So just here on the graphic, number 1 is vision. Number 2 is pragmatism. Number 3 is consensus building, or team building. Number 4 is charisma. And number 5 is trustworthiness. Now, 4 out of the 5 of these have a lot to do with connecting. Vision. You need to be able to explain your vision to others and be able to then consensus build or team build to make that vision happen. Being charismatic has to do with other people, being able to be charismatic. Trustworthiness, it all has to do with connecting with others. And if we think more about connecting versus communicating, connecting is the ability to identify with people and to relate with them in such a way that it increases our influence with them. So it's funny, I recently came back from a cruise, and I purchased one of those Wi-Fi packages on board. I was going on this cruise with my friend Buddy, and we had planned this trip like 2 years prior. So we were having a little brocation, and we were gonna go to Greece. It's gonna be a great time. Well, I met my girlfriend a few months ago, and she's like, "Man, like you're gonna be gone for like 2 weeks, and we're not gonna be able to like talk." So I purchased this Wi-Fi package. I'm like, like what I can do is I can purchase this Wi-Fi package, and I can use Messenger to call you from the boat. It'll be great. Like we'll figure it out. Well, during those conversations, we would disconnect like 10 to 12 times, and there was no doubt we would disconnect because with Messenger, it makes almost this boop, boop, boop. When the connection was bad, almost like a sonar sound. And then when the call would drop, it would just go boop. And so there was never a time where we were like, oh, I didn't hear all that you said because there was like a disconnect. because that sound would interrupt the conversation. And even though, I wanted to talk to this person, like I had information, she had information that she wanted to share. We missed each other. We wanted to talk to each other. We both became visibly frustrated that we were having so many problems with connection. And sometimes, in conversations, I I disconnect. I'll be listening to a training or someone talking, and I'll see a slide or I'll hear something that will make me think. And so I'll stop listening and I'll start thinking. And then I want to raise my hand, like, oh, hey, I disconnected here. Can we stop and go back? I almost wish that, when two people are talking, be it on the phone or, on the in person, like the old 90s telephones used to go, whenever the line would go dead, it would go, ooh. I almost wish that when we talk to people, like when I'm up on stage or I'm talking to them in person, if they disconnect from me, I would just get that dial tone, ooh, and then I go, oh, okay, we disconnected. Let me backtrack. Maybe I use terminology that you don't quite understand, or maybe I made you think about something. You need to pause and think about it for a second, and we can go back to it. I thought, man, that would be great, because we commonly don't know when we disconnect. That's the crazy part, is when we disconnect and we stop and we think about something and they keep talking, we don't commonly know that we've disconnected, and that can be an issue. So there are very telling signs when we have good connections with people. And I actually put them on a slide for you guys. In just one second. So these are some connecting signals that someone is connected with you. So number one is extra effort. So people are willing to go the extra mile. When you have a connection with someone, they're going to put in a little bit more. Increased communication, number two. People express themselves more readily. Positive energy. People's emotional batteries are charged by being together. It's funny. I read a book on introversion versus extrovert, and actually there's one in between called an ambivert. And introverts, when they interact with people, their battery starts to drain quickly. And so then they need that private time to kind of recharge their battery to be able to interact with people again. And then extroverts are the opposite. They gain energy from interacting with people. Well, I feel that there's also, when you get two people together that have a connection, think about someone you have a connection with. When you go to hang out and you're in the same space, you're energized. You're energized in a good way, and you feed off each other's energy. Number four, unsolicited appreciation. Okay, people stay positive. People are positive around people that they have a connection with. Number five, enjoyable experiences. People feel good about what they're doing when they're around people they're connected with. Growing synergy. People's effectiveness is greater than the sum of the contributions. Number seven, unguarded openness. People demonstrate trust when they are connected with someone. I mean, it goes without saying, people we have a connection with, we trust more. Number eight, emotional bondedness. People display connection on an emotional level. And then the last one is unconditional love. Now, that sounds strange, but what I mean by that, and what John means by that in his book, is people are accepting without reservation. That first principle is about influence, increasing influence with others through connection. I have two friends of mine. I have Rory and I have Donald. And Rory, he is all about finding new cool restaurants to go to. He loves going to new places to eat. And what's fantastic about this is whenever I'm wanting to try a new spot, or I find a spot that I want to try, I'll call up Rory and say, hey, I'm thinking about trying this restaurant. What do you think of it? Roy will give me his opinion and his review, and I trust it, like unwavering, because I know that that's something he does. So he has that influence over me. Now, Don doesn't go out to eat a whole lot, so I can't rely on Don for that trust. Now, Don's an avid reader like myself, and so if I go to read a new book, I phone up Don and say, "Hey, Don, I'm thinking about reading this book. What do you think?" And I would have complete trust that Don is going to give me a review that is going to set my mind at ease that this is going to be a good book to read. Now I'm not going to go to Rory to ask him about books. He's not a reader. He likes to go out to eat, and that's how we have that influence. And so that goes to show you that those connecting signals can vary between people too. Now, John Hall, he did an interesting experiment, and I'm going to share that here in 1 second. So he did a experiment. He has a PhD in telemetrics, and he conducted a study on the performance of 16,000 executives. And the conclusion that he found that there's a direct correlation between achievement and the ability to care for and connect with people. And so you can see kind of the results of this test. So high achievers care about people as well as profits. Average achievers concentrate on production, and low achievers preoccupied with their own security. High achievers view subordinates optimistically, while average achievers focus on their own status. And then low achievers show a basic distrust of subordinates. High achievers seek advice from those under them. Average achievers are reluctant to seek advice from those under them, and low achievers do not seek advice. Big surprise. High achievers actively listen. Average achievers listen to only superiors, and then naturally low achievers avoid communication and relied on policy manuals. Always be wary of the ones that rely on policy manuals. I remember 2 years back, I did a keynote speech at Bushnell University. And one of the cool things about it is there were going to be some hearing impaired folks that were going to be in our audience. And so they brought in someone who would sign for me while I was doing my keynote speech. And we were going to do it 2 days in a row, two different auditoriums. And the first day, Margaret was fantastic. And we had a meeting beforehand about what that would look like. She's like, talk for a little bit, pause, let me translate, and then we'll move through this and everything will be quick, easy, and painless. No problem. So I get up there and I'd speak for a little bit, and then I'd look over at Margaret and she would, sign what I had just said. And we moved through the day and it was fantastic. And we got great reviews and people were really happy with the teaching that day. And so I was energized. I was pumped. I was excited. And that excitement carried over into the next day. And I had met Frank, and Frank was going to be my signer for day 2. And I was so amped up about, that people were getting something out of the teaching. So I started going. And the problem was I forgot to stop. And it took me probably a good 3 to 4 minutes to realize what I had done. And I look over at Frank and he looks at me with this like wide eyes with his hands up because he had completely lost me. And I look up at the audience and they're a little dumbfounded too, at least the ones that came that were hearing impaired. And so, I had a moment of panic and then I just laughed. I laughed and I was like, sorry guys, I messed up. I completely disconnected from Frank here. So we're going to backtrack a little bit and we're going to get through this and it's going to be okay. And I'll tell you, that audience connected with us that day because of the vulnerability that I expressed. I'm not perfect. I mess up, I screw up like anybody else. And to admit that on stage and the audience laughed and they kind of got re-engaged, and there was actually even a better connection in that room than day 1. And I formed even a connection with Frank. We went out and had drinks after the keynote speech, and we're still friends today. And we kind of bonded, we kind of connected over that moment of vulnerability. So being vulnerable, or at least transparent, can lead to influential connections. Now, if there's competency, let's say we take two people, right? Same competency. And this could be a leader or a coworker. One of them is more human, more personable. And this one over here is more fact driven and sticks to, just their work. Doesn't really get personally involved. Who would you rather work for? And sometimes you get a mixed bag. Some people don't value connection, and that's okay, but that's going to put a cap on how far you will go in your work, in success, and in your personal life. One of Brene Brown's quotes, she's a brilliant author and keynote speaker, and she talks a lot about leadership and vulnerability in the workplace. And she said, vulnerability is not a weakness, it is our greatest measure of strength. Greatest measure of strength. And if you think about that, it's like asking for help. It takes more courage and strength to ask someone for help when you're struggling than to struggle in silence. And vulnerability is the same way. It takes a lot of strength to be vulnerable with your people, your coworkers, your managers, your family, your friends. But that has great potential influence over people that you're trying to connect with and communicate with. So number 2 principle is connecting is about others. Connecting is about others. I love reading Zig Ziglar quotes. Zig Ziglar was a brilliant man, and he has a lot of wisdom and knowledge. And if you've ever listened to Zig Ziglar speak or read one of his books, they're fantastic, and I highly recommend it. So Zig Ziglar quote that I absolutely loved, and it's very simple. It's very simple. If you help people get what they want, they will help you get what you want. Let me say that again. If you help people get what they want, they will help you get what you want. And that is why connection is about others. So there are 3 things that could impact our ability to think of others and not ourselves. Number 1 is immaturity. The definition of maturity is the ability to see and act on the behalf of others. Number 2 is we fail to value everyone. When I was in college, I had a friend, Eric, who was in a nursing program. And they have to take exams at the end of their course to be able to become certified nurses. And one of the questions on this course was, tell me the name of the cleaning lady who cleans our room. And one of the students, they asked the professor, is this a real question? And the professor responded, oh yeah, no, it's a real question. The student, well, I mean, does it count as much as the other questions? And the professor looked back and was like, of course it does. Because you're not going into the nursing business, you're going into the people business. See, that's what business is. Business is about people, not the business. Simon Sinek even said, our employees are people. Our supervisors are people. Our customers are people. Our shareholders, at least most of them, are people. So if you don't understand people, you don't understand business. Number 3 is ego. Oh, goodness. Yes, ego. That is something that gets in the way of a lot of people, and it will definitely disrupt your ability to connect with people. So there are 3 connecting questions that kind of feed off that you need to ask yourself when trying to connect with someone, because when you're trying to connect with someone, or someone is, trying to lead, what their employees ask of them is, Number one, do you care for me? Number two, can I trust you? And number three, can you help me? These are very important questions. And if you think about it, these are the questions that almost subconsciously run through your mind when you get a new coworker, when you get a new boss. And so on the flip side, we have to think about those questions and how we're going to impact that when it comes to connecting. So John tells this story about Linda Kaplan Taylor. She was like the marketing guru. In fact, she helped Don Amos put Aflac on the map. Now, when Aflac first was coming around, it was a great product, but no one knew what the company was. Like it was a company, but nobody knew Aflac, and Don really wanted to get the Aflac name out there. So Linda Kaplan Taylor brought her team in, and they sat around and started brainstorming on how they could bring Aflac to a forefront. And her team's sitting around, and someone's joking around and made it sound like a duck, Aflac, and someone's like, "That's it. That's what we need. That's what'll do it." Did you know that Aflac is the number 5 recognized company name in the world? All because of that stupid duck. So John goes on to talk about, Linda Kaplan Taylor. She had the opportunity to interview Warren Buffett. Now, a lot of people want to interview Warren Buffett. The guy's made millions and millions and millions of dollars on the stock market. And so she got an opportunity to meet with Warren Buffett. And one of the rules of Warren Buffett is you only get 10 minutes. You get 10 minutes with Warren Buffett. And so Linda did all this research on Warren Buffett, where he made his money, where he went to college, and all this stuff. And one detail stuck out to her. Mr. Buffett liked cherry Coke, which makes sense because Coke made Warren Buffett $11 million. You'd probably want some Coke. You'd probably like some Coke products at that point. So when Linda got to this meeting with Warren Buffett, the secretary sits her down and says, "All right, you got 10 minutes, so think of the questions that you want to ask if you don't already have them prepared, and we'll bring Warren out and you can have a discussion." So Warren comes out and sits down, and Linda reaches into her bag and says, "Mr. Buffett, I know we only have 10 minutes, but I thought we'd start with your favorite beverage." And she pulls out a cherry Coke and hands it to Mr. Buffett. And Warren cracks that cherry Coke and goes, "You young lady can have as much time as you'd like." Linda Kaplan Taylor had an hour and a half with Mr. Warren Buffett. To connect with people, you need to forget yourself. Linda did something for Mr. Buffett and made it about him. And so she got that extra time on that interview. So our number 3 principle is connecting is more of a skill than a natural talent. Waldorf Elf Emerson said that all great speakers were bad speakers first. And what he's saying is none of us are born with this natural talent for what we do. Can you say that you were an excellent airplane mechanic when you first started? No, you had to work at it. You had to hone it. It's funny. John goes on to tell this other story about when he was in seminary school, and he had this friend named Don Crooks, and he was going to do his first sermon. And John's an encouraging person, so he wanted to support Don in his first speech. And John was going to give a sermon the very next day, and so he wanted to kind of go there to support him, but also kind of maybe look at some feedback for his own. And so John sat in the front row, and think of the worst speech you can think of, and then go down. Okay, it was awful. Don only spoke for 3 minutes, and the problem was it was 2 minutes too long. He got up there and he was all nervous and he was just sweating and he was wiping it off with his hands, and he's like, "Lord help me, Lord help me, Lord help me, Lord help me, Lord help me." And so then he would say something, he'd make a statement, And then he would forget where he was going with it. And he'd go, Lord, help me, Lord, help me, Lord, help me. He's pacing back and forth. Lord, help me, Lord, help me, Lord, help me. And then he would say something. And then, again, he would forget where he was going. And Lord, help me, Lord, help me, Lord, help me, Lord, help me. It was excruciating. And so for the first minute, John's sitting in the front row. And then John is like, Lord, help me, Lord, help me, Lord, help me, Lord, help me. And then in the second minute, everyone in the audience was like, Lord, help me, Lord, help me, Lord, help me. And then after a while, they're like, Lord, help us, help us, help us, help us. 3 minutes, and it was over. When they got in the car, okay, John Maxwell is a very encouraging person. But this was beyond John's capacity. There is nothing that he could say with any credibility or authenticity that it could encourage this man. And he said, Don, it was your first time, and I know it will get better. And you've helped me with my first message. And Don turns to him and goes, well, how did I help you? And he's like, well, I'm not going to say, Lord, help me. And I'm going to go longer than 3 minutes. So that was John's goal. Speak longer than 3 minutes. And so he prepared an outline going into the next day. And so he had topics that he was going to go over. And so John listed off his topics, and he goes, I'm going to talk about, number 1, sin. Number 2, conviction. Number 3, salvation. Number 4, prayer. Number 5, Bible study. Number 6, witnessing. Do you see what's happening here? Are you getting the picture? He basically should have got up and said, I'm going to talk to you about all the world and all the things within it. He felt proud when he was done, and he got in the car with his wife, Margaret, and she didn't say one word. That should have been a hint, okay? Silence isn't golden in marriage, for those of you that don't know. She did not say one thing to him. And so finally, John was like, he had to ask, so how did I do? Well, John, she said, you accomplished your goal. You went longer than 3 minutes. And John, looking proud of himself, says, oh yeah? How long did I go? And Margaret responded, 55 minutes, John. Can you imagine those people? He was surprised they didn't shoot themselves. A couple of years later, John went back and he apologized. He apologized to those folks, but he knew that they weren't the same folks that he had talked to prior, because they wouldn't have come back. So there are different skills that we can use to connect with people. So on the topic of skills, because connecting is a skill, not a raw talent. So up on the screen, it says principle 5, but it's the third principle we're going over today, that connecting is more of a skill than a talent. So one of the ways we can use skills to connect with people, so relationships, who you know. And a lot of you people who are familiar with networking, who you know can be very vital into your success in connecting with people. Number 2 is sacrifice. How you've lived. People like Mother Teresa, and I mentioned him earlier, Nelson Mandela, they have the ability to connect with people because of their sacrifice, the things that they have gone through. When I was growing up as a kid, I had it really hard. I had a really hard childhood. We were very poor, and we had to work for everything. I had to work for everything that I got, even as an adult. And I connect with people on that level who have similar backgrounds growing up. Sometimes our sacrifice connects us, it bonds us. Insight is number 3. Insight, what you know. If you're a person who's known to be knowledgeable about what you're doing in a work field, people will naturally gravitate and want to connect to you. They want that information, and vice versa. Number 4, success, what you've done. Okay, so people that are successful, back to Warren Buffett, he has had amazing success in the stock market and investing in companies. And so people want to connect with Mr. Buffett because of what he's been able to accomplish. John Maxwell has a lot of people that want to connect with him because of all he knows about, leadership and in the success he's had with it. So it's kind of like a double, an insight and a success. And lastly, our ability, what you can do. There's a reason we pay millions of dollars to NFL quarterbacks and skill players, because we connect with them. Their coaches connect with them because of their ability, and so they get that big paychecks, $15-30 million. And the same goes for in our workplace. You want to connect because of the ability. When people have a specialized skill set, we want to connect with them so we can learn from them. And so that brings us to a close. Hopefully these three principles will bring you success in your life, bring you success in your job, and really increase your ability to work in a team environment, or maybe someday be a leader and promote to be in charge of an area. And these are really important things. We want to get to a point where we're connecting with people, not just communicating, because it goes a lot farther. Thank you for being here today. If you have any questions, or you would like more of this training or hear more about what this looks like, because there are several principles in this book that I would love to go over with people, because I feel it is imperative, it's crucial. And so thank you again to Fabio. Thank you guys for tuning in and checking this out. And I hope you got some value from it, and have a great day. Thank you.